questions. Bob?
Thank you, John. A couple of questions on the strike last night in Afghanistan. General Taylor just said that 2 high-profile targets were killed and 1 wounded. The initial announcements, I think, said 1.
Yep.
This was all the same strike? Was it a single strike? And can you explain any more about whether these individuals were directly involved in the Thursday bombing at Kabul airport?
So it was, without getting into too much tactical detail in terms of munitions used, I would tell you it was a single mission. And to get these targets, and as the assessments and information flowed over time, we were able to recognize that another was killed as well, and 1 wounded. So, I mean, battle damage assessment, as you know, sometimes takes time. Information comes in. As we have more clarity, we wanted to be transparent about that.
But the planner, facilitator description, does that mean they were involved directly in the Kabul airport attack?
They were ISIS-K planners and facilitators, and that's enough reason they're alone. I won't speak to the details of these individuals or what their specific roles might be, but as the general said, we have the ability and the means to carry out over-the-horizon counterterrorism capabilities, and we're going to defend ourselves. And I think I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. I'd like to ask you another question about the airport situation at the moment.
Yeah.
Is it true that only U.S. passport holders are being allowed onto the airport now through the gates?
Any U.S. passport holder that wants to get in can get in, and we are still. If I'm wrong here, I don't think I'm wrong. Well, we are still processing and getting on planes SIV applicants as well as vulnerable Afghans.
So they're being allowed onto the airport?
That's far as I know, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think that's changed. Idris?
Hey, John, so can you give us the names of the 2 individuals killed in this strike?
No, we're not going to release the names.
Because...
We're just not going to release the names.
And if I can just go back to Thursday's suicide bombing, there appear to be images and reports from the ground that some of the Afghan civilians killed may have been shot by the Marines at the gate. At this point in time, since we're 48 hours, do you have any evidence that the Marines or any of the U.S. troops may have shot injured or wounded?
We don't. We can't confirm that, and we certainly are not in a position to deny it either. We are investigating this, and as we get more information that we can reliably communicate to you about this incident, we will. Yeah, Tara.
The State Department issued another dire warning saying don't approach the gates. Did this airstrike have anything to do with that potential for future attack? Can you talk about what capabilities ISIS might have lost in this drone strike?
Well, a couple of things. I'll let the State Department speak for the advisory they sent out. That is not uncommon for them to do that, particularly in a country like Afghanistan, and they're constantly watching the threat environment, as are we, and they're doing a prudent, responsible thing to inform Americans there in Kabul about what's best for their own safety. But again, I think I'll let the State Department speak to the rationale there. Obviously, again, they're doing what they believe they need to do to keep people safe. I am not going to talk about specific capabilities ISIS may have lost in this strike. They lost a planner, and they lost a facilitator, and they've got 1 wounded. And the fact that 2 of these individuals are no longer walking on the face of the earth, that's a good thing. It's a good thing for the people of Afghanistan. It's a good thing for our troops and our forces at that airfield. And I think I'm just going to leave it there.
And to follow up, can you discuss the level of threat right now at the airport? We've seen a number of the allies bring their evacuation operations to a close early. Will the U.S. still stay there through the 31st?
We are going to complete this mission by the end of the month. We've said that. Nothing has changed about the timeline for us. And we will do this in as safe and an orderly way as possible. And that includes being able to continue to evacuate right up until the end.
But what about the threats at the airport? Can you describe what are they still?
Threats are still very real. They're very dynamic. And we are monitoring them literally in real time. And as I said yesterday, we're taking all the means necessary to make sure we remain focused on that threat stream and doing what we can for force protection.
A couple of questions. First for you, John. Have U.S. troops begun retrograde withdrawal from the airport?
We have begun retrograding.
Can you say anything about the number who have left?
No, I cannot.
And then, General Taylor, for you, please. The numbers of military aircraft who have left are relatively consistent with where they've been for several days, but the number of passengers on them is down from where it was. Does that mean that the U.S. is now starting to move some equipment, military equipment on those, or are there planes that are going out just not full?
As we said, our mission to continue evacuating those as required and to meet the mission requirement by August 31st is what the commanders are executing.
So does that mean that you're starting to take some equipment out on these aircraft, or does it, or do you not have enough passengers?
Yeah, there is equipment leaving on those flights that was originally planned.
And then if I could ask one more, since have there been any attacks? General McKenzie talked about how the Taliban had thwarted some attacks before Thursday's attack. Have there been any other cases that you're aware of that the Taliban have actually stopped attackers from getting in towards the airport?
I don't have specific reports of that, other than, as you can see, as we just talked, the security of the base is the most important thing that we're doing to allow us to continue our mission.
Thank you.
Yeah.
David?
So, John, you said the threat at the airport remains active and dynamic. Is it fair to say that whether or not those people killed last night deserve to be on the face of the earth or not, that the threat at the airport remains unchanged?
I wouldn't say that it remains unchanged. I didn't say that. I said it remains active and dynamic, and it does.
Is it as serious as it was yesterday?
It is a serious threat. I'm not sure how any potential terrorist threat can be anything other than serious, or that we shouldn't take it seriously. It's serious.
Yesterday you denied the Taliban claim that they had assumed responsibility for security at some parts of the airport. Is that still the case, that the Taliban do not provide security at the airport itself?
That is still the case.
And is that going to remain the case until the end, or at some point do they have to move into the airport to keep the crowds at bay while those last planes take off?
I'm not going to talk about the specifics as we get closer to the end. Let me just say this, as clearly as I can, we will maintain the ability to defend ourselves and our operations all the way through. Yeah, Lucas.
John, did the Taliban in any way provide any intelligence or any support with this drone strike that killed those two ISIS terrorists?
I'm not going to talk about intelligence matters one way or the other.
Rule it out.
I'm not going to talk about intelligence matters one way or the other.
Taliban supporting this drone strike in any way?
We had useful intelligence on our own to conduct this strike.
Do you consider the Taliban and the Haqqani network separate entities?
Lucas, I'm not going to give you a breakdown here, a characterization of the Taliban or Haqqani. Now, Lucas, you got to remember what we're focused on here, and that's on getting more people out and getting our troops out, completing this mission. And I'm not sure what benefit it does for me to try to characterize one group or another. We know that the
people that the deputy leader of the Taliban is Surgeon Haqqani, who has a $10 million bounty on his head. People should know. Are these separate entities, or
we know that there is a certain matter of commingling here. I mean, there's a marbling, if you will, of Taliban and Haqqani. What I'm pushing back a little bit on you, Lucas, is the relevance of that discussion to what we're trying to do today, which is complete an evacuation safely and to get our troops and our forces at the airport out safely. That's what we're focused on.
One more question. Every major newspaper and television news outlet has said that the U.S. military brass recommended to the president to leave 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, not pull out. Have you asked any of those outlets for a correction?
I'm sorry, say that one again.
Every major newspaper and television news outlet has reported that top Pentagon brass, from the defense secretary to the head of U.S. forces in the Middle East and Afghanistan, to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, recommended to the president that 2,500 U.S. troops should have stayed in Afghanistan, not been pulled out. Have you asked any news outlet for a correction to those stories?
Thanks for repeating it. We don't make it a habit to talk publicly one way or the other. Right, wrong, up, down, more or less, about the advice and counsel that Pentagon leaders give the commander-in-chief.
What about correcting the record?
Louis.
Has there been another helicopter evacuation recently?
No, I don't think there has been. No.
Okay. Can I follow up then on the discussion about the drone strike yesterday? It's been characterized as being retaliation, as being reprisal for the bombing at the airport. Is that accurate, or was this something that, as part of your over-the-horizon counterterrorism planning, you were already targeting?
This was a little bit of both. I mean, we have the ability to conduct over-the-horizon counterterrorism capabilities. We've talked about that. This certainly fits in that mold. But it's not coincidence that it happened just a couple of days after we lost 13 brave service members.